Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
I wish you knew how excited I am to welcome my friend and colleague, John M. Jaramillo. He is the founder, leadership performance coach, and consultant at Coach It Out, LLC. He helps clients from students to seasoned executives break through and expand to their next level of self-awareness, performance, and effectiveness throughout their career journey. John openly shares his way of being this year, how he taps into his anxiety as a tool for awareness. He models the way with intentionality and embraces joy through serving others and their discoveries. Sit on the edge of your seat and take notice of the profound ideas that John openly shares, and enjoy the show. John, how you doing? It's so great to see you, and welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? How was your New Year's?
It was great. It was low key. It was local. I had fun. I stayed up.
I stayed up. Not even I went wild, but that's like the metric of success on New Year's is I stayed up.
Were you up? Did you stay up? Yeah.
Yeah. My wife and the younger two kids went to bed probably at 9, and then my son, my 9-year-old, and I stayed up. That was his first time staying up to midnight, so he thought he conquered the world. So we had a good time up until then. He went to bed right after. It was a good time. It was just awesome seeing the excitement in his eyes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I can only imagine that feeling. First time, right? You see the ball drop and all the excitement that goes with it.
Yeah. He's like, Daddy, what is that? Like when they were showing it in the lead up, I'm like, well, this is how it works. And he's like, so all those people are just standing there? I'm like, oh yeah, they get there in the morning. And then we started talking about how do they manage going to the bathroom, kids and the questions that they ask. So
love it.
It was I love taking that time where it's just kind of one-on-one with each of the kids. So that was a good one. That was a great one.
Yeah, we're going to ask a lot of those type of questions right now, just to seek out what's going on, and given it's the new year, what's new with you? What are you bringing into the new year? What are you passionate about? Like, what's on the top of your mind?
Me, in all honesty, I think I've been kind of neglecting the things that I need in work or whatever it may be. I've been playing dad for 9 years now and just giving kind of all that I can to my kids. Obviously, still podcasting, still writing, still coaching. So I'm still doing all those things, but you kind of get to a point where you feel unease, like something's not right, something's not quite right. It's not a nagging feeling, but it's there. And you talk to yourself, you reassess, you assess, and there's more that I have to do for myself. I've given everything I can to my kids, my family, my wife. Still gonna carry out my duties as dad and husband, absolutely. But I think there's more that I need to do for myself to kind of balance it out and stay healthy. Like I haven't felt good for the last year just because, you have under my roof, spouse, 9-year-old, 5-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old. So it's like a whole set of dynamics playing out. So I just realized self-care, taking care of myself, seeing what it is I need, listening to my body, sticking to working out more than I have in the past. So it really is about me, but it's more about me so that I can be the best that I can for them, for my wife, for my clients, for my colleagues, such as yourself. So it is about me, but again, to create that right ripple effect.
I appreciate you sharing, the need for us to slow down, self-care, taking care of ourselves so we could take care of everybody else around us the way we desire, we hope to do. And I can tell you're not alone. There's a lot of people feeling this way, and I don't know what it is. I think you've gone through a lot over the last 5 years since the pandemic started, and there's a lot of hope. Yet there's a lot of things that have already happened this first couple of days of the year that you start to question. So I appreciate that you're slowing down enough to reflect and really think by what you want to be and how you want to show up.
Yeah. It's like you get to a point where you don't have a choice. You're not feeling good mentally, physically. So you just have to step back. Even if you have a spouse, even if you have the 3 kids, you carry out whatever duties you feel you have to them. It's like, okay, but what do I need? What does that look like? Do I need to coach more? Do I need to write more? For me, Do I dive into my photography more? Do I dive into podcasting more? What does that look like? Because for me, it's not necessarily slowing down. So it's slowing down to take in what it is I need. But for me, getting that certain kind of energy out of myself, that helps me a lot. Because I've talked about it in my podcast where my anxiety I see as just this pent up energy that I have to get out in some creative form, whether it's relationships, conversations, working out, being creative, whether it's photography, writing, whatever it may be. So it's not slowing down in terms of, stepping outside and taking a break. Sometimes it is kind of
Yeah.
diving into writing. It's diving into creative because when you stand up from those things, you just feel energized. Even conversations like this, I feel best when I stand up from my own podcast, talking to somebody and having a great conversation. So I know that's the way I'm going to feel after this conversation. So I want to thank you in advance.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate you sharing that component too. It's not about just slowing down. So, thanks for that
Yeah.
perspective. I don't know about you. And I think we actually met with a group now called the Connect Exchange. They meet every Thursday, and I think we met on one of those events. And what we talked about today was about how do you enter in the year? It's like, do you have a theme, a word, a way of thinking, a way to help focus your year or your day? I'm curious if you have a process, an approach, or what you do.
I think after so many years of resolutions that you don't keep, you just realize that that process, it's a personal choice, but for me, it just doesn't work. So I want to head in the right kind of directions. I want to get in better shape. That's part of that kind of healing process, that motivation process, like what we just talked about a couple minutes ago. But for me, I see everybody posting online about their word and the things they're going to do and the goals that they have. Again, each person has their own system. For me, I don't want to be too rigid. When it comes to health, you can measure that in metrics so that, whether it's weight, cholesterol, all that kind of journey, that's already on the board. Everything else for me, I would just pin it to one word, and that's just live. So when I've talked about to you and to others about this whole thing about this dynamic of fatherhood and it can happen for moms. I can just speak for fathers and I can just speak for myself. You got to figure out what it is you might need. So for me, the word is just general enough, live, and then kind of figure out what that means day to day, hour to hour, week to week, whatever it is that I'm drawn to that I need for myself to live. That's that's kind of like the parameters I'm putting on myself. It's just live, whatever that means to me at whatever point throughout the year that I'm in.
Now, do you see that as something that will put you into a certain space or an action, like when things get challenging or difficult, or can you expand on it a little bit more?
It doesn't have a form, it hasn't taken shape, but
Yeah.
whatever applies to me, whatever speaks to me, I'm all about saying yes to new experiences, meeting new people, whether it is picking up my camera more, whether it is more writing, freelance writing, whatever I need. The way that I've always looked at it, and I've mentioned this in my series, is I look at it as through the lens of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I've spoken about this on other podcasts as well, where for me, that basic layer where it's about survival and your needs are met and your security is met, to me, as long as I have the roof over my head, clothes on my me and my family's backs, food on the table, yada yada yada, as long as that's safe, as long as the bills are paid and everything is kind of accounted for and we're planning as we should and making sure that everything's covered, everything else is area to experiment, to play, to live, to do new things. So because those basics are covered and I want to make sure they continue to be covered, I want more space to play. I think I've talked about it in my series as well, like the difference between my dad's generation and mine. To him, as far as I can see, maybe success was just kind of providing for your family. He was a stoic guy, never really spoke much about his feelings or anything, right? But maybe for him, it was just having your family safe in a house, bills paid. Maybe that was it for him. We're coming up in different times, so we're hearing about what drives you, what do you want, self-care, what is it that you want to get out of life. So it's a different place than previous generations. Each generation is making a new
Mm.
track. So I just want to make sure that I'm doing what feels right. Maybe in previous generations, okay, everything's covered, the family's safe, everything is good. us, it's like, okay, everything's good, but what else do we need for ourselves to really tap into who we really are?
Now you mentioned your series, the podcast called The Book Leads, which I love. Of not only being a guest, love following you and everything you're sharing. It's quite awesome. Curious, what are you learning? What are you getting out of it? Like, what are you seeing and noticing?
It's such a loaded question. A good one though. When I started off, I think typically most of us when we start a series, it's about getting our name out there, sharing our work, our faces out there, whatever it may be, being thought leaders, sharing our specialty and whatnot. But then as I was having conversations with more and more people, I mean yourself included, everyone shared what their background was, their stories, their ups and downs. So where I wanted to, and just to for anybody that doesn't know the series, it's just interviewing leaders in my network, growing network, about themselves and a book that they find impactful, whether they're the author of the book or not. So it was all about getting to those books. And then as I was having more and more conversations, I realized how much I was learning from the people that I was talking to. And I just realized how important their stories are, how much in common we have based on our past. You don't really, I think in the age of LinkedIn, I think everything, and we're all guilty of it, but we put up what our specialty is, but we don't really get the story of who someone is from a post. I mean, it's getting more and more common for people to put everything about their lives and what they're going through. But I mean, a real conversation about, okay, your work, where did that come from? What is it about you that you've learned in your experiences that you bring to your work? How did that evolve? And then explain a book to us that's impacted you. And it's just opened up conversations. I've talked about stuff I didn't anticipate talking about. I love hearing the response from them when they say to me, no one's ever asked me that question, or I've never spoken about that before. It's just very eye-opening. It really taught me what my anxiety is just from hearing different stories. It taught me how to address my anxiety, how to live with my anxiety, where it might come from. And it's made me a better person overall because now instead of when I'm in public and I see somebody, I was friendly before, but there's just something about when you really practice getting to know somebody, the more you do it, the more you want to do it. I call it my master class in humanity because I always went back to school, but now this is my new form of learning from my fellow humans. And I think we need that more in life. So it's what I've learned, how I've evolved is just the humanity that's out there, what we can learn from each other, and just trying to be a good human myself. I know that sounds cliche and woo woo, but I think we need more of that now.
We absolutely need more of that. I applaud you for it. Why not? Like, why are we shying away from, what's innate in all of us? Yet we're shy because it's squishy or we don't want to have or show it. I don't know. Like, it's not soft. Actually, it's actually pretty hard. And then it allows us to connect. And I don't know. I don't want to get to details about what you mentioned regarding your anxiety and the elements of that. Is there some thread maybe in the conversations that you were able to see it and be able to address it to set the conditions so you could handle your anxiety or overcome it? Was there something that was a common occurrence or something maybe that you noticed?
Any realization I've had is just kind of like a culmination of all these different conversations. And some of the people that I have spoken to have specialized in anxiety and talk about
Okay.
burnout and all that. And then there's my reading that I've read about anxiety. So I think it's a combination of my reading, my talks with people in general, my conversations with specialists in that area. Where again, to me, I just see it as I don't want to extinguish the anxiety. I think it serves a purpose.
Right.
I look at it as living with it. It's a tool that I can use. When I start feeling a certain way, it's like, okay, what do I need? Do I need something physical? Do I need something mental? Do I need something emotional? What is it that this energy would best serve me with if I tap into it? Do I need a workout? Do I need to write something? Do I need to call somebody up and have a conversation? So it just has reminded me, again, what we hear about self care, listen to yourself. So when I start feeling a certain way, I just kind of tap into myself, see what I need, and just hop on it. Where in the past, what's great about the series is I've realized that when you speak out your fears, your anxieties, whatever they may be, and you're talking with somebody about it with somebody that you trust, talking about it to me is almost like 90% of the problem. I don't think we talk enough about what we're going through. So I think when we get it off our chest and you hear somebody's gone through something similar, that's like 90% of the hurdles. And I've lived with anxiety for a long time. So that's why I told you before we started this, ask me anything. I'm an open book. I've learned, just handle the day, tackle it however that you can. But yeah, it wasn't one conversation, but a culmination of different things where just like listen to your body. What do you feel anxiety? What is it you need? Do you need to get up and move, exercise, whatever it may be? Whatever the what we're talking about is, I think everybody should tap into what their needs are and really listen to themselves. So I'm appreciative that it's opened up my eyes and allowed me to talk about that. In moments like this, when you ask me where that might come from and what it looks like, it's just that curiosity. It's just that curiosity between people. And I found when you open up, people open up and you're like, okay, I'm not the only one that feels it. Because I'm telling you, the worst part is feeling like you're the only one that feels certain
Yeah.
sensations or feelings or emotions.
Yeah, we're not alone. Just like how you opened up about thinking at the end of last year how you're feeling. I think there's more than we know. There's probably a large percentage of people have these questions and they wonder about certain things. And I just want to go back to your point about using anxiety as almost like a whisper, to listen to. It's pretty powerful what you just shared. I don't know if you recognize this, but for anybody listening, and we all have a level of anxiety. It's like how do we use it? How do we use it as a tool to put ourselves on the right track or to not let ourselves fall all the way down, right? It's a tool to be resilient by. So what you shared is very profound. So thank you for that.
I think it was from the book, like The Upside of Stress, or it might have been The Power of Habits. One of those books just went into what stress is. And you just think about how we're not too far from not being civilized. So we spent millennia and millennia, you know, fearing real things, monsters that are out there, tribes that are out there, enemies that are out there. Now in our society, I think society has evolved, like our technology has evolved more than our brains have. We still live in that primitive mind, fear, fight or flight, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when you read about it, you're like, that's what it is. Like it's just our bodies need to move, our bodies need to fight something. So when there isn't stress that really stands out, when there isn't, because I have all that, what I talked about with Maslow's hierarchy, because I have that stuff sorted out and I don't have an eminent something fear coming at me, it's like your
Yeah.
mind starts saying, okay, we need something to fight against. What's that next fight about? Not everybody's the same, but that's just the way that I interpret it in my mind. So if everything is good with my family and I'm just not really tapping into the right energy, my body's like, okay, what's going on? And that's when I have to go find those certain challenges to kind of burn off that energy. That way back when might have been defending something, hunting, fighting off, fighting shelter. We're programmed that way when again, civilization has evolved so much more quickly than I think our minds have. And we don't know when we feel anxiety what that is. That's the way I interpret it. So it helps me prescribe that to myself. Okay, get going, do something because you have all this energy that's pent up. If you let it just burn, you're gonna burn out. So that's what I
Yeah.
do through my writing and all that creative stuff is just kind of get that energy out of myself.
Yeah, back to your word, you're living. You're living consciously too, right? It seems like you're stepping into what's available, what's present, what's current. And back to the power of habits, I love that book. I think one of the elements that if I recall correctly, about the steps that he talks about in the book is it's about what you're saying. It's about being aware, being able to notice something, and then to do something from that, and then to feel a positive outcome or reward. So then you're going to want to do it again. You're going to want to take notice
Yeah.
of it, and then you're going to repeat it, and you're going to start to form another habit. It doesn't mean your other habit goes away. It allows this habit to come alive, which I
Mm.
feel like is your word. This is what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. If I feel a certain sensation, what is it I feel that I need? What is it that I can look for? Who do I reach out to? Instead of just kind of, I don't know, sleeping it off or eating it off or drinking it, whatever it may be. What can I do? What am I feeling? What can I, instead of just allowing it to trigger something that pushes me back, what can I
Yeah.
seek out? What can I do that moves me forward, or at least just kind of recenters me again? And I
Yeah.
laugh when you talk about going back and doing it again, because what I've stuck to is just biking in the morning, stationary bike indoors. But I've realized how good I feel with after just 40 minutes on the bike every morning, 40 minutes. And I've dropped, 7 pounds in a month. And I'm sticking to my 540s. So 5 days a week, 40 minutes. That's it.
Right.
That's all
Yeah.
I got to do is 40 minutes on the bike. Some days are easier than others. That's all I have to do to reach that goal that I want to feel amazing when I get off. I don't have to go
Yeah.
45. I don't have to go an hour. Like 40 minutes is that sweet spot. But like you said, it's like you got to go back to it. You got to go back to it. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It creates this ripple effect of just energy. I have a different energy to have this conversation with you than if I hadn't been on that bike this morning. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's
Absolutely.
just funny how you talk about making sure that those steps, if you see something, do something, and that leads to this habit, or if you don't, it kind of sets you back.
I'm curious about just kind of speaking from your podcast. I got to ask you, like, what is a book that's really impacted you? Like, what has there been something that's really impacted your way of leading, being, loving, living, whatever that might be? Is there a book that comes to mind for you? And what is that about?
Yeah, the one to do the podcast, I said, okay, if I'm going to interview people on a book that they found important, I got to do one myself. So, like, I forget if it was 0 or 1, was me talking about the leadership challenge. And I wanted to bring that up when we were on here. So, this is my copy. This is from grad school, fifth edition. I think it's up to seventh edition. This is the book that got me into leadership. This is the book that when I was reading every sentence, and it goes through research and cases, and they had been doing research for, I think, 30 years before this book came out in 2012. Just the way that they were writing about it, I was like, okay, this is what I want to be into. This is where I want to work. This is where I want to just share whatever I can, learn whatever I can. So that one, and regardless of how many books I've read, whether specifically about leadership or in that same kind of vein, there's been no other book that just touches upon leadership the way that this book does. I haven't found one. I think for me, pound for pound, this is the best leadership book out there. I don't know what's in the seventh edition, but regardless, this one as a foundation, I think it says 25th anniversary. So obviously
Uh,
there were editions before that. But me, pound for pound, I've gifted it to clients to start off
nice.
engagements just because they don't have to think about it the way I do. They don't have to read it into it the way I do. But I just want them to have that broad exposure of what the book shares with them about what they can practice, what they can get from leadership and the power that they have.
Well, I'm going to order mine after we get off the call here. So maybe we could actually do a debrief on your next series down the road. That could be interesting. And I'll let you know, like if anything stands out that they talk about with the seventh edition. I imagine it's got to be fundamentally the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm telling you, for me, it just talks about all the areas. And I think everything that we talk about in leadership today, you
Mm,
can you can trace back to this book. It's powerful. It's
nice.
all encompassing. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. And yeah, the invitation is always there for you to come back on the show. Absolutely.
Awesome. Is there a practice that kind of stands out when you think about this book quickly? Like, because like you said, there's practices in there. Is there something that just, wow, this one really hit me?
Well, I say practices because it's broken up into sections of 5 practices, and then
Okay.
it goes into each. And they're pretty self-explanatory. So the first one is model the way. So it's
Yeah.
like show people what it is you want. Inspire a shared vision, self-explanatory. Challenge the process, enable others to act, encourage the heart. Challenge the process for me, I love just because I don't know. I just always ask questions. I always say what no one else wants to say, not out of
Mm,
notoriety or anything like that, but I think we spend too much time being extra safe instead of just kind of getting to the heart of the matter of what we might need. So I like that
Yeah.
particular practice of just challenging the process and kind of reinventing and innovating where you can, when you can, however you can. So if somebody reads the book and doesn't enjoy it, please let me know. Be honest. Please let me know. I will reimburse you. But for me, pound for pound, if you're thinking leadership or going to school for leadership, whatever it may be, if you're going into a leadership position, buy that book. Maybe the
Yeah.
seventh edition as well. I don't know.
Well, I like when you say about the challenge, the process. You're not saying that what you're thinking or your way is right. Just challenging what's there, and then what else can we learn through inquiry and asking each other some open questions and be open-minded to it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's got me in trouble in the past. And even personally, with
Yeah.
friends, some tough love,
Yeah.
where people didn't want to step on, or cause any problems. But I felt like for me, if I didn't ask certain questions, I felt it was a responsibility to ask certain questions about how they can evaluate things, whatever the situation may be. But yeah, I think we need it. I would also recommend Radical Candor, and it speaks to that, where
Yeah.
you can speak your concerns, but in such a fashion that you don't fall into certain areas where it might seem like you're an egomaniac or a narcissist, but that you're really concerned about what might be going on. So I just think we need more of that honesty, but from the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. Get back to the kind of encourage that with the heart, that other practice there.
Yeah.
So challenging a little bit, just curious about your journey. You and I have talked about your journey, our separate journeys, right? There's been challenges. We have probably childhood memories, good and bad, and ones we question, or maybe even things that have lit us up. Like it really
Yeah.
has been an epiphany or an aha moment or whatever that is. I just would invite you to share. What are some of those moments along your journey that really stand out to you, that have shaped you today, that's serving you, that you're bringing forth into 2025?
Yeah, for me, it's my parents. Just seeing how they were with people, how open they were with people, how helpful they were with people. For me, in writing and contributing to different books over the course of the last couple of years, I've realized in writing whatever theme for whatever book I was working on at the time, I was like, okay, where does this coaching stuff come from? Where is it that this comes from in me, that when somebody has an aha moment and they feel helped, like it warms my heart. I'm like, okay, that's what life is all about, is somebody realizing what they have. And it's my parents. It's just the way they treated other people, the way they helped other people. They're immigrants from a different country. So my dad was just always helping people. He would never say no. He always volunteered however he could. And that just set the example for me of just being somebody, a servant, just helping other people, and not really fearing that it's a zero sum game, but just that there's plenty to go around. I mean, whatever, I think whatever you do for other people, it isn't a zero sum game. It's something you create from who you are. So, I mean, anytime I think about the good that I do in life or what makes me happy, whether it's my dad's laughter, his helping other people, my mom's life lessons, it all goes back to them. I'm very grateful for them for where I am now, because without their lessons, and they never sat down and gave me lessons, it was through their actions, stuff that I watched, that just has impacted me. And that lights me up, is just those
Yeah.
lessons and how I can kind of pass that on to my kids.
They modeled the way, kind of going back to the book a bit and the practice, and you're doing
Yeah.
the same with your kids. Like, tell me more about your role as a father, and how is that impacting you? And I'm thinking about your 9-year-old son kind of looking at the midnight, right, with bright eyes. Like, we've talked about that a little bit. Like, how do you be a great father and model the
Yeah.
way and see life through their eyes? Like, how does that all come together for you?
I mean, there's so much in there where this society now is so much different than when we grew up. I grew up in the
Mhm.
80s, and now with all the technology we have now, we're losing that face-to-face conversation. It's more digital. Social media is all over the place. And again, it goes back to that word living. It's like what feels right in a moment. I can't prescribe what the right way is to do anything, the right way to react to anything. I'm building that bridge as I cross it with each one. But it's awesome. It's awesome because I have the mindset of this book. I have the mindset of learning about yourself. So where my dad maybe didn't have the tools to share with me because he was an immigrant, he was working blue collar job, working multiple jobs. His availability, his flexibility was restricted because he had other duties he had to get to really provide and set that security foundation. I have more flexibility. I grew up in this society. So it's interesting to have conversations with my kids. I've already given them more lessons than I ever got from my dad. My dad never gave me a lesson. They disciplined us, but the biggest lesson was probably don't talk back. That's not how you talk. But there weren't like long conversations about lessons and what happens if this and what happens in that. Like I was talking to my father-in-law in Florida. His family were immigrants too, and when you're an immigrant, there's more on the line. You've put more on the line to come to this country. You gave up everything you had to come here, so the stakes are higher.
Mm.
Now it's like more relaxed from his generation of mine. So it's great just having conversations because I understand what my son is going through in this culture, but at the same time, I still got to learn the whole digital thing. What is that like raising a kid in that world where I was gone all day on my bike wherever, and his world is a little different. So live, you do what is called for in the moment and you do the best that you can. There's no wrong answer, but you just have to have the right intention. So it's interesting. It's interesting because he's a curious kid. He asks a lot of questions. He loves to laugh. So the best part about the kids is like you feel like you're looking at your inner self or an extension of yourself. So things are going
Mm.
good. Haven't nailed it perfectly, but again, live. So the best that I can do in any given situation, that's all that I can really do.
Yeah. And nobody's doing it perfectly yet. Some of those elements allow us to grow, right? How do you expand if we think we have it all right, or if we're not trying to help each other, give our best or be our best or get our best, whatever that might be. And I just love how you're modeling that. And you don't have all the answers. You're seeking them out as you go.
No, and you mentioned it before in terms of my parents modeling the way. And for my kids, I try to model the way. I inspire a shared vision. Like, okay, what do we want? What do you want? How can we help each other? Challenge the process. I always tell them, I'm like, listen, if you think I'm wrong, tell me. And believe me, they're opinionated. But I don't shut them down. You know what I mean? They'll
Yeah.
say, okay, but that's not what you said yesterday, Dad. And then I'll go back. I'll be humble. I'll apologize and course correct. So they're doing that. I'll challenge them if I need to. Enable others to act. I love empowering them. If they fall, whatever it may be, I'm going to be there to support them. Encourage the heart, like I do that all the time. They're amazing kids. I don't want society and education to get their hooks into my kids.
Mm.
Again, you and I have talked about that. You've written about that. You coach on that wonder that we have as kids, and I don't want that to dissipate. That
Mm.
terrifies me. If there's anything that terrifies me the most in the world is seeing that wonder in my kids' eyes, all of them, that love for life that they have being extinguished because of things on the outside. It's going to be a process. It's going to happen. I'm not going to say that I can block it completely. All that to say is this book has helped shape the way that I look at certain things, and leadership lessons go between the workplace and coaching and your kids and your family. But yeah, it's an experiment. I'm not care I try not to be careless about it, but it is, as you said, I try to keep an open mind so I can keep learning as I go.
Yeah, your point about bridging too. You're thinking on the fly. You're working through it. You're navigating, I guess, is the word that comes to mind. And I think with our kids, so important for us to arm them with how to navigate situations where they're told how to be or told how to think in a certain way, or what's right and wrong. Is there something in between? I think helping our kids navigate that so they don't feel wrong. Because I think when I grew up, I was told I had to act a certain way or be a certain way. I was told by certain people that were in authority they said some things that were pretty awful. And you start to ask yourself, like, am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to follow what they're telling me to do?
Yeah.
The reality is no, we have to really help our kids navigate what the right way is.
Yeah.
And I go back to, I love what you're saying. It's about loving life and about living it in the present and being conscious to what's really there so we can navigate. Because if we're unconscious or subconsciously not looking at what could be or what we're imagining, then we're just going through the motions.
Exactly. That's a major word that comes up a lot online, a lot in the conversations I've had, my series, intentionality. Like, what are your intentions? And I like how you say, we can't give them the answers, but it's their thinking. We got to get them in that mindset to question things, how they look at things, what their intention is. It's going to come down to how are you going to maintain your integrity? If all these other kids or all these other people want certain things or look a certain way or say certain things, where do you stand? So we'll see. That's our intention. That's the way that we've worded it. We're malleable, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting the next couple of years. But I think if you have the right intentions, you have a lot of love for your kids. It's not cookie cutter. It doesn't apply to all people. So people are in different circumstances. But I think just love, live and love. I mean, when it comes to your kids, it's just letting them know that you're there because we're going to be going through again, different times than I grew up. I don't know what to expect, but as long as they know they have us as a foundation, I'll do the best I can.
John, you know what's amazing is your word is live. My word this year is love. I love how you just put that together, live and love. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we're new age hippies or what, but it's not that hard. You know what I mean? It's just like live, have a good time, look out for other people. And again, it may be because of somebody's circumstances that they don't see it that way or they can't see it that way. But wherever there may be people that don't see it that way, you and I do, and we just, try to do the best and kind of create that ripple effect through our families and our communities.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it's just setting a different condition for ourselves. And you use the word intentionality. What do we really intend? And are we just saying that or are we actually following through on it? And sometimes when we're not following through on it, we own it like you did with your kids, saying one thing the day before and the next day not following through on that and owning that, right?
Yeah.
That's truly owning your intentions and being forgiven for bad execution. And that's what we need more of is really forgiveness and our ability to actually seek out what's really there. Like, did you really intend that, or how did that go, or how can we learn from that together? And not really judge. Like, don't. We said this on your podcast. You said this, I think, where I think you said something that was like, don't let judgment have too much power, or don't put power in judgment, because that is, you think about that. I've forgotten that. Like, it's so important.
Yeah.
Like, if why give it energy to judgment?
Yeah. I think you realize that as you get older. Again, it goes back to our primitive minds. We want to be part of a tribe. It's programmed in us. If you think about it, you can feel that need. Okay, that tribe. Where do I stand? Where am I alone, or where do I belong? But we're not where we were before. We don't have the urgency that we did in those days to remain alive. That we had to be with a group, a collective that was larger than us. So, what do you stand for? So, again, that maturity through life is kind of like you get to a point where it's like, what does judgment really do? It's like you do the best you can and then seek out people that will allow you to kind of work off each other, not
Yeah.
people that will tell you what you want to hear, treat you the way you want to be treated, and just that, but people where you can kind of push each other to move forward. But yeah, judgment. Yeah. I mean, I've already tried to have that conversation with my son. Like, he was feeling a certain way from this other kid and what he said. And it's gotten to
Hard.
this point where, he was kind of bullied on the bus by a kid. And maybe where we are in society, even my wife and I were talking about, it's like in the past, we would fight against that. Okay, how can we fix it? And then we're just like, okay, what is this kid going through at home? Or what does he have or doesn't he have that he's acting this way? So just being aware of what's out there, what you can put out there, but we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. There's just so much going on in the world. We can only kind of control through our example and set in place with our example what we can in our communities. We have this instant access to everything around us, but we forget what we can do in the day to day with the people around us.
Beautiful. I know I just thinking a little bit about my own kids and the bullying that's going on and how to help, what happens and how to work through it and how to navigate, how to really persevere, be resilient, knowing that it's not really a personal thing for our kids or for any child or for anybody that gets bullied. Because I see bullying in the workplace, I see bullying all around us. It's about, levels of judgment actually that people are putting on us that they think they are entitled or empowered. And gosh, I don't think there's no room in my mind for that. I don't find it acceptable. Yet I am curious. I try to dive into it with care and love about understanding what is going on. So I appreciate your words there. And I'm gonna go a whole different direction here just to lighten us up a little bit. I'm just curious about what brings you joy. I have a sense based on what you shared, but what brings you joy and how do you feed that?
These days, it's like exploring with my kids. I think joy comes from internally when you can use your best energy, when you can use your skills, your ability, your passion, your love, and kind of manifest that and create something with it, or seeing that from someone else or experiencing it together. I definitely love watching my kids explore. I love getting their questions. I love looking at life through their eyes. Again, 9, 5, going on 3. The questions that they ask. So obviously, joy with family, kids especially, but just coaching, serving others. In all honesty, is there's that squishy stuff again. It's amazing when I can help somebody figure out or think about things in a certain way where they can see themselves. So again, creating myself through whether it's playing guitar or any kind of instrument, my
Yeah.
kids watching them play or helping somebody else. I think if there's a I try to have moments of joy, real moments of joy like on the regular. And it can look different from day to day, but I want a good laugh. I want a good hearty laugh. I
Yeah.
want somebody to realize what they're worth, how valuable they are. I want to experience that. That's one thing I try to want to see and create or witness on a daily basis is just kind of those great moments of joy. We're always working, we're stressed out, life is coming at us, but I try to find those moments with my kids, whether it's teasing them, getting them to laugh. I love getting people to laugh and lighten up. I get that from my dad, even if it's self-deprecating, I'm fine with that. I learned that from him. But yeah, just really living life. And I think you spoke to something like that a couple minutes ago where it's like, okay, you're saying this, you're using the word intentionality, but what are you really doing? How are you really living life? So I want to be certain that I am living my best life, whatever that looks like day to day, big or small. It doesn't have to be monumental. And share those moments of joys with my kids when I take them to a museum or hiking, or they see a certain landscape, or they see a picture that I took. So just little things like that. Conversations like this, you understand and see the humanity in somebody else, that you have so much more in common than we would be led to believe otherwise. But we have to have these conversations. We have to open up to each other, and be transparent. So again, I appreciate you for having me on here and sharing what you have with me, and seeing in my work and in my life certain things that you've pointed out. You've used certain words with it. So I'm appreciative that you see those things. It really, when you hear that from somebody else, it really stands out. And it's another little moment that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, I'm just smiling here because as you're talking through joy and happiness and all those elements, everything you're talking about is these experiences, these moments with other people, levels of connection, the things that you're doing, like you see, you're living, like the way you're living, you're finding joy along that path. And that's 80%, 90% of where joy really comes from. It's not at the outcome. It's not about the job title. It's not about the actual guitar. It's the music that comes from playing the guitar and the joy of it and the love of it. And what you're saying is so harmonious to what joy is innately in all of us.
You have to step up to it. I don't think there's some occasions and instances, but it's not only going to come to you. I think most of the joy that you feel in your life, even if it's in moments with other people, it's because you've stepped into that moment. It's because you were there. It's because you contributed to that. So, and it's like these conversations and on my series, like it's an alchemy. It's like you take your experiences, who you are, mine and who I am, and let's see what we and develop together. So I think it's a very, aside from intentional as a word, you have to be proactive. You have to go out there and help create that. So I think a lot of my anxiety in the past was just kind of sitting back, waiting for things to happen, waiting for people to come to me, waiting
Yeah.
for them to create those moments. Where when I started feeling real joy is when I was proactive and not just waiting for that to come to me, but to step forward and help create it with and for someone else. So I think it comes down to energy. What do you want to put out there? It's cliche, you get what you put out there. And I think it is true. It's our little experiments in life. When we didn't do that, we weren't getting as much as when we did intentionally, proactively, authentically, genuinely put that out there.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm thinking inside, like, I'm so energized. As soon as you said energy, I'm like, this is hilarious. I mean, that's just the point, right? The level of connectedness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the best thing I love about conversations is when you are in that kind of symbiotic state of flow, when you realize you have the same values, you've had the same ups and downs, success and falls, not the same identically, but in the emotion of it. There's
Hmm.
nothing like having a great conversation. I always stand up high, feeling high from a great conversation, from that
Hmm.
energy from your fellow human. I mean, it sounds squishy, but I've experienced it. It's amazing, and that's what keeps me doing my podcast. Is just finding those great conversations, and all that we're sharing here,
Yeah.
other people can hear and maybe think of things in a certain way that they haven't before.
Yeah, I have found the greatest gift you can give anyone is listening, and then how we're listening and how we build on that. Not to top it, not to say, hey, this is what I did. It's more about how it could be expansive and helping people realize that what you said is that they have the joy, they have the light, they have the capabilities, they have the potential. And I share that with you about bringing that out in people, and that's the joy that I get on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And when we talk about this podcast, Live Your Possible, like, I'm curious, John, how do you define it? Like, when you think about the name, Live Your Possible, like, what does that mean to you? I feel like we've covered a bit, just the fact that we've used the word live a little bit. Yeah, and then what is there one more idea or one more tool to remind someone to step in with us in this space?
I think people have to, in order to live your possible, to step into your possible, whatever that may be, I think people really do need to start with themselves first and figure out what they want. Not for anybody else, not for social media, not for their family, friends, nothing like that. It's like what I'm going through right now, and it's an experimentation. But what is it that I need so that I can feel better and show up better for others? So I think people really need to understand what showing up for themselves means. Again, going back to what I said about waiting for those moments of joy to find me as opposed to really stepping out. I think the greatest thing that I've found with coaching is the power of listening to others. And that is true, but also listen to yourself. I think, it's that example of the airplane mask where don't put it on the next person, put it on yourself first so you can be there for the other person. But I think people really do need to understand what they're capable of. I think we get locked into the scripts of society, whether it's college, whether it's work, whether it's family. Yeah, there's certain things you have to do in your life, duties you have to carry out, but what do you want? What do you need? What fires you up? What are you passionate about? What might be missing? I think people need to ask themselves those questions and then kind of look at their list and work towards the areas that they can to find their own joy. I mean, real joy. Because there is joy in the script of having the family and the house in the suburbs and the white picket fence and the dogs, whatever your version may be. But you might check off all those boxes and something still might be missing. And it's not a reflection of my family or wife or any of that, but there's something that you may be missing for yourself, even though you love and take care of everybody else. What do you need? So I just don't want people to get caught in the trap of the script. And I want them to really consider what it is they might need for themselves. Really, really look at yourself, listen to yourself, and don't forego what it is that you may need.
Insightful, wonderful. John, I'm curious about what's next for Coach It Out in your consulting and coaching practice. And also, if you could share, what's the best way to reach out to you that you prefer?
I'm on LinkedIn all the time, so just look me up under John M. Jaramillo on LinkedIn. In terms of what's next, with each phase of independence of the kid, like the smallest one, well, now she's getting more self-sufficient. Now I can kind of tap back into my work. I've kind of I stepped back from a lot of my work with each kid that we had, but now I want to step back more into coaching. I want to do more freelance writing, which allows me to work at, oddball times and still be there for my family. Podcast is amazing. It's at 120 episodes, just wrapped up the third season. Keep going with that. The love that I have for it, the energy I get from it helps me sustain that. But I'm always looking for just collaborations, great conversations, whether it's in writing or podcasts, whatever it may be. Yeah, I'm just anything that I can do to help people tap into the kind of conversations and topics that we've talked about today. I'm all game for.
Yeah, congratulations on everything. And I just admire how you're serving the world, how you put yourself out there. And, I appreciate your work and, truly am thankful for, just being a colleague, being there for each other. And, love you, man. It's my word's love. So I'm going to tell you, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Love you too. Love the work you're doing. Absolutely. I think when you find certain people that share those kind of values, deliver it in similar or different ways, tap into that because that unleashes stuff in you that I think is valuable. And again, we've talked about it, how we need more of that in today's society. So I appreciate your time and having me on.
Yeah, thanks for everything today, and look forward to our next chat.
Absolutely. Thanks, buddy.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.